Everyone is looking good here. I know that my guest mom is going to be pleased. And if my mom were here, she would probably tell me to trim my beard. Appropriately, I'm awkward. And these are the awkward interviews. I'm so glad to be back here because I have one of the coolest guests yet. Her name is Tiffany Flowers. She's a social, economic, and racial justice movement strategist and organizer. And I'm shocked to tell you that I first learned of her only recently through Day Without Us. She's going to explain all of this to us. But this is one of the most exciting things in my 25 years of activism because it is powerful, radical, womanist, Black women leading a charge that could directly put us in a position where we could maybe general strike. Those who have known me for a while have known I've been talking about a general strike for a long time and the necessity of mutual aid in order to enable that, as well as, the right media attention. And another thing I talked about was having directly impacted people take the lead and also determine what the goals of that strike should be. And Tiffany and her co-organizers have done that with Day Without Us. And I'm not going to say another word about it because I want her to explain. But before I let her do so, it's also worth noting that this same individual unionized or was critical to the unionization of all of Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential campaign staff. She negotiated that historical contract, and she also helped anchor the drafting and unveiling of the Breathe Act. Again, something, if you know me, you know I'm a huge proponent of. I've talked very harshly about the George Floyd Act, which conversely was set to give nearly $1 billion more to police and wouldn't even have made what happened to George Floyd or my friend Eric Garner illegal. The Breathe Act, which Tiffany can touch on, does quite the opposite. It puts us in a position to live in a more humanist society that we abolitionists envision. Tiffany, thank you so much for joining me. I also want you to tell me about your DJing. I had no idea that you were also known as DJ Searchlight. You may not know that AWKWORD was originally just a rap name. So for our 10 Demands organization that I know you've checked out, one of the first things we did to get the word out was create a music video called 10 Demands, and all the money from that, all the proceeds from that went to Movement for Black Lives, which we know was behind the Breathe Act. Thank you, Tiffany. How are you today?
I'm drinking out the hose, as the kids say. Yes, Day Without Us is in 2 Fridays, and so the work, it's challenging, but it's good, it's a love offering, and me and the team are working ourselves day and night to get there, but I'm doing good. I'm good. My spirits are high. I'm feeling encouraged, and I'm really, really happy to be here.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. And I guess I just showed this. There it is.
Yes.
I had surgery, but I'm okay. Anyway, that was not intentional. Moving on.
Are you okay for real though?
Yeah, I'm all right. Thank you. It's incredible to see not only who is leading this movement, but the vibe, right? Like you made a very important point that might have slipped past people. You talked about this being, although I can't remember your exact initial words, something to the effect of a labor of love. Love was the critical term. People who don't understand what we do, who don't understand what abolition means, for instance, certainly can't understand how we could be talking about love. When we talk about abolition, their first question is, what about the rapists and murderers? Who solves the crimes? Who stops the crimes? Blah, 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 blah. We know that none of that is actually happening anyway. But tell my audience, when you think of abolition, what do you envision? And what do you mean by love? What is Day Without Us doing with love to connect us better, to lead us to a better place?
Yeah, I'm gonna start with abolition first, and then I'm gonna just talk about my love politics. But when I think about abolition, one of my comrades does an exercise around what abolition actually is. And it starts with asking the audience to close their eyes and just kind of pop up and around the room. What is a beautiful day? What does the most beautiful day in your community actually look like? And the ideas that come forth are really all the things that we know a beautiful day in our community looks like, right? Joy, laughter, freedom, children, abundance, sharing, safety, people feeling in actual community and feeling joyful about it. And nothing that comes out of that exercise has anything to do with police, has to do with people being detained, has to do with people being profiled or mistreated. None of those emotions come from it. People open their eyes, they're smiling. You can literally see the warm and fuzzies, right? And so that's what we mean. Literally the opposite of what our enemies and the people who oppose us and want to see people like us live in this military state for our entire existence want us to believe that it's something scary. But that was the love, going right into the love of the Breathe Act and what we thought was going to be the most appropriate response to what we were all going through in the summer of 2020, which was not just boots on the ground and protests, which is very necessary, but putting some policy and some language behind what we meant when we said defund the police. We meant take all that money, the extra money, the money that you're going to instinctually want to give to the police in a moment like this, and think about what community investment looks like. Think about what it looks like when people are in mental crisis. Think about it when people just actually need someone to offer a helping hand and they don't end up dead or they don't end up incarcerated, but they actually end up someplace safe and they're actually receiving help and able to turn around and come back to society feeling more whole and participatory. So we could talk about this all day, but like, I also think it's incumbent upon us, right, to break it down and to make these terms understandable and digestible so that the people who oppose us can't keep winning with the boogeyman strategy, right? We just have to talk about beautiful days and safety for ourselves and our families and our community.
Beautifully said. Yeah. And I think the more people learn about abolition, even people who intellectually understand the injustice of our system, even those who understand its inception coming straight out of slavery and Black codes, may not fully grasp what you're talking about, what Dylan Rodriguez talks about. It's not a trademark. It's not something, it's not a goal even to be reached. It's a way of living. It's a way of thinking, and it is endless. And it is in many ways against what we're often up against from the government. And in a lot of ways, it's irrespective of it. It's parallel to it, which, you know, I think you really touched on when you talked about community. And there's another word you used too, where like, we're making connections, we're really supporting each other. That's something that really doesn't exist a lot in our communities. And that's not by the fault of our own, that's in spite of all of our efforts. You know, every time, for instance, a Black man is removed from his neighborhood, that doesn't just affect his kids, his wife, it affects the whole community. It affects where he works, and that has lasting effects. And, you know, another thing that you mentioned was similar to my take on the general strike. You know, when you're talking about getting us toward abolition, this also doesn't happen overnight. It's misunderstood in that way too, right? You know, when you talk about abolition, I'm curious to hear like what you envision in terms of like steps. Does Day Without Us provide a stepping stone in that direction? Because that's what 10 Demands attempts to do, at least, is provide a stepping stones, a framework. You know, we took what Movement for Black Lives did at this grand national level, where even the politicians, the biggest politicians, the AOCs who are ignoring it, are at least aware of it. And then, you know, we took that and kind of added a ton of meat to it. The 10 Demands is like thick. There's a lot of stuff there, actionable things. And for us, what's really important is that each thing chip away at the system, that none of these reforms are reformist in nature.
That's right. Yeah, I 100%. People have been asking that question a lot. And what I would say is that you have to start somewhere. Everybody started somewhere, and nobody, none of the strongest leaders of all of the strongest movements were able to galvanize all the support that they needed for the thing to happen at the first strike, right? And so I'm hoping more than anything, like, just to go back a little bit in the question about love, right? This really was born out of love, in that I'm an organizer. I have been an organizer since 2005. I spent 2005 into 2019 in labor. Bernie was my last campaign. And then I started working on things around democracy, defense, and really started digging into understanding the courts, the filibuster, and just really the linchpin of our oppression, and thought that that would be a good place to put my energy. And so people know me, they're an organizer, people know you. When shit goes down, when stuff goes down, people call us, like, what's the truth, right? People trust us to know the truth, or be somewhat connected to people that know the truth. And then the next thing they want to know is then, so how to react, what to do, what can I do? And
Exactly.
The team that I'm on for Day Without Us, those other 6 women, we were all 7 Black women who, in the midst of our own devastation and disgust and feelings of just like, everything is wholly inadequate right now for this moment, because they say Black women are the canary in the coal mine, right? And so we've been saying, our elders have been saying, they gave us reproductive justice as a framework decades ago, right? Because Black women have seen what would and what could happen as these rights were eroded. And so we was tired of people calling us. We were tired of these one-off conversations,
right,
that we were all having about what to do, what you could do, and giving people these like very mundane, localized solutions, and thinking about what happens if we have this conversation at once, right? And then what happens if we bring, going back to our elders and our leaders, those folks into this conversation? Because again, it's hard to sell me on brand new organizations, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I get frustrated when I hear nobody's thinking about X, no, they are. They definitely are, but they probably need more people like you and people like us to be down with them, to strategize and come together, right?
It's very clearly like, at this point, I think to a lot of people, how important it is for me to ensure that as many people as possible know we did not create 10 demands to replace anybody. Period.
Right. Yeah. And so it's the same exact energy. And so reaching back to those or across rather movements, to the folks leading Black reproductive justice work, who have been leading it, who gave us framework, and who everybody keeps saying, we know who's going to be most impacted: Black and brown folks in the South, pregnant people in the South, Yeah, so where are they?
Yes.
And why aren't we centering them? And why aren't we lifting up their stories? And why aren't we lifting up their organizations? Because we also know, if they're in the South and they're Black and brown, what are they? Underfunded, under-recognized, right? And so we started with people like In Our Own Voice and Afia Center and other Black-led groups, and just asked, like, how are y'all feeling about this? Again, I come from labor, others come from democracy and housing and faith organizing. And so it's not in our depth. We're not repro organizers, but we know how to bring people together. And so we started with them and asked, we know it's not our depth, but we want to help. And we're thinking about it in this way. And they were like, yes. And so then our next stop was, shout out to the bros, Cliff over at Black Voters Matter, Maurice Mitchell at Working Families Party, Rana at Move On, Ashley Allison at the Fight Back table. Like, literally, this project was born from us just texting and calling our social networks and other longtime organizers across movements and being like, what do y'all think about this? Because we're just doing this as 7 people. We're not doing this connected to our jobs, but we are connected to people who are connected to organizations. And they were like, keep going. And we were like, okay. So then we just started figuring out exactly what it could look like and what day. And this was, July. and we needed a bit of a runway. And so we started ideating around days, times, possibility. And Friday, September 30th is
Tell us.
It's the 46th amendment of the 46th anniversary rather of the Hyde Amendment. And even something like that, right? Through all of this discourse about abortion and vaginas and who can do what, these phrases get thrown around and people don't even really know what they mean. So you got to start there, right? The Hyde Amendment stops people who are pregnant, who are also on Medicaid, from getting an abortion, even if a doctor looks them dead in their face and says, this would mean the difference between your life or death, and I can't do it because you're on government assistance.
And here's my favorite part. What happens when the kids get born? They blame the moms. They say they did it on purpose. And everybody
is to blame because you made people carry children at the will of the state. When you force someone to stay pregnant, you are forcing them to carry out the will of the state, and we are supposed to be free. Big energy around supposed to be.
Clearly.
And so we were like, okay, that's our day. We're doing it. Friday, September 30th. Then we started working back from there. And then we started thinking about what it should be and what it shouldn't be. And I think this part is also really important because as organizers, what do we know and believe? All power building is local. Everything, all your power starts locally. And I have no disrespect. I have nothing but love for my fam at the Women's March and other places that have been able to do amazing, amazing things across the states, distributed action. But I didn't want to do it that way this time. And I thought that A, because people are exhausted, B, we got to stop acting like we're not still in a pandemic. We definitely are. It felt irresponsible to ask people to stop what they were doing and come together knowing the risk. Also white supremacist nationalists who are looking for targets, like, let's be honest, just thinking about security all around and thinking about how all of us more than ever are longing for community. And we're gonna need it. The way things are going, we absolutely need it. And so we came up with this idea for kind of a hybrid day of action. So what we are inviting you all to is to join our programming, and we're calling it edutainment because it's going to be fun. We are going to share information, but it's gonna be fun.
I'm pretty sure KRS came up with that, and I'm pretty sure I used it and was embarrassed to use it, but I'm gonna allow you to run with it.
We're bringing edutainment back.
Yeah.
Make edutainment great again.
But it really is a great combination. It's exactly what it is.
It is, and you know what? Most of our attention spans are shot to hell. I was joking with Awkward behind the scenes. I owed him some things. I was like, my ADD beats my ass every day, right? So we know that we're competing with phones and completely shot out nervous systems because everybody's so exhausted. And so to put on a day where there's keynotes and plenaries and again, acknowledging different levels of privilege. I've been on Zoom working for 3 years. I can get from a main stage to a plenary to a breakout group and back. My aunties can't. My cousins can't. And so we're just going to run a day of programming straight from our website. You can just log in and join us. You can leave, you can come back, but we're going to just run it straight from the website. And then in the second part of the day, we actually are in the process right now. Shout out to Angela Peoples, leader of the pop-up team. We are coordinating pop-ups all around the country. Shout out to Ben & Jerry's, our national partner, who says if you do a pop-up, they're going to give you ice cream. If there's a Ben & Jerry's where you are, you can do an ice cream social. Again, another hip hop reference, ice cream, community rules everything around me.
That's right.
Ching, you weren't ready for that.
I really wasn't. You're good. You're good.
And so, yeah, you know, we have expansive visions on what those pop-ups will look like, because again, it's not one model. I live in Baltimore. I have no idea what the people in New London, Connecticut want for a pop-up. I have no idea what my friends in Brooklyn want to do for a pop-up, but they do, and they know what will get community out. And so we're literally just working with everyday people on the ground to develop these pop-ups where people, everyday folks like you and me, will be able to show up. maybe get a little ice cream cone, maybe learn more about the 10 demands, you know, whatever it is. But these are the things that are going to keep us together, keep us informed, and build community where we are.
Absolutely. My goodness. I didn't even have to ask you, because that's obviously everything I wanted to know, everything everyone needs to know. And I say that actually with the like awareness that there aren't a ton of details on the website. And I have to say that my initial thought was, damn, I want to know. And then my next thought, because, you know, I've received death threats, is one, well, for two reasons. One, it's kind of cool to keep it a surprise. So when like someone crazy shows up, I'm going to freak out, right? And then on top of that, though, you mentioned white supremacist violence. It's not just the groups are the police also, and they always have been. And so, yes, every time you or, you know, I go out to support you, like you go out or I go out to support you, you and I, and especially you, are very unsafe in a way that the Proud Boys are not. I mean, they are literally protected every time they leave. They have state-sponsored guards, the same people who beat, gas, disappear us, whatever. And so I'm glad you're not putting out the details until, I'm assuming, the last minute. That's smart.
So yeah, we're opening it up. There's actually registration now because we're going to have a mass call. We want to talk to the audience, right? We wanted to have an opportunity to be really honest with the audience. When you do something like this, as organic as it looks, you have to take a lot of security measures from the very beginning, because the people that are against us, they actually know they're not winning. My good friend Ense Ufat says, in the marketplace of ideas, they know that we're not buying what they're selling, right? And so they have to try to intimidate us. They have to try to make us scared. They have to dox us. They have to crash our websites. They have to knock on our mom's doors, like we saw for the voter registration people in Georgia. And so, again, going back to the love and care that we have for our audience and the people that are going to take this extraordinary risk, I'm not going to do anything that's going to put anybody in danger. I'm not going to do anything that's going to make this any more difficult for anybody to participate. So you can go register today. If you, I mean, it's up right now. If you register, yep, if you register, you're going to get an email from us. We're going to have a mass call. Again, we're taking lessons from all parts of movement, and we're bringing them together in ways that we think are effective and work. And yeah, we want to do Q&As. We want to interact with folks, but we don't want you to be in an environment where you're Zoom bombed. I've been there before. You've been there before. It's crazy. Even though you're in your own house and you're on Zoom, it's very unsettling what these people are able to do. And so I'm just trying to protect everybody and take as much safety precautions as we can. But yes, eventually there will be a lot more, it will get a lot more robust, and we have some surprises for y'all.
Yeah, I bet. I'm excited, man. And you know, I didn't have to do that much research on my end to know that this is something that I wasn't only gonna kind of tangentially support, but I'm like, as you can tell, I'm like pushing this. I really am so excited by the potential. I mean, like the angle you guys are taking. I think, you know, the timeliness of the bodily autonomy issue, the Roe v. Wade decision, and you guys kind of organizing around that, particularly, well, for one, because it affects half the country, and for another, because it particularly affects certain parts of this country. But you're not only tied down to that cause. You know, if anyone goes to the website and, for instance, looks at the FAQs, you'll see that they want participants with a lot of different core interests because they're all interconnected. And, you know, it's also worth noting that abolitionists and anti-fascists don't always agree on things. I grew up beating up Nazis, and then I became an abolitionist and realized that beating them up was not making them hate me less. They hated that fucking Jew more. So this, what you're doing from love, the belief in transformation, all of this supports it. And, you know, I'm happy to say that there are people, former Nazis, who are actually doing some of that work, going into those, back into those communities and trying to undo generations of disinformation.
My God.
And while I am in no way, and I don't know about you, but I am in no way a pacifist, I believe that leading with love is our most effective approach, particularly because otherwise we'd be hypocrites in a way. And also because unfortunately, we don't have the weaponry to fight a war.
No, we do not. But we have, what we have is attractiveness. What we have, you know, in my when I switch hats, I'm also currently the campaign manager of the Frontline, which
Yeah, tell me about that.
yeah, the Frontline is a joint campaign between the Working Families Party, the Movement for Black Lives, United We Dream, and the Rising Majority. And we were actually born the summer of 2020 when 27 million people in America, I don't think people really understand like what happened that summer. 27 million people who had never protested, never made a sign, never called the senator, never sent a tweet, never donated to any racial or social justice causes were activated. 27 million new people, that don't count us, right? And so our vision, and I think we were a big part of it, was to take that energy and make people, help people see that you can take these boots on the ground and actually turn this into electoral justice, right? And that it's not about, I'm never not gonna tell people to vote, I'm gonna say vote. And voting is one of our biggest tools, a couple different times, you know, a year, a life, and every year we get an opportunity to exercise that tool, but we only get that opportunity every year. But every day we could be doing something. Every week we can be doing something in our communities. And so the Frontline was born to take that energy, turn it into electoral justice. And again, because we love each other and we want to keep things as light and safe as possible, you all will recognize us as the people who were joy to the polls. So when Buster just showed up at the polls, that's the Frontline and joy to the polls. Shout out to Nalini Stamp and the WFP for that vision, and the Joy to the Polls crew. Those folks in yellow sweatshirts and hoodies all around America, and also the people holding the dance parties after the election outside of the convention center in Philly, the people who were still hitting the paint and bringing some fun and pizza to the polls when people were standing in line for the runoff in Georgia. That's also my work. And so I am approaching this comprehensively and trying to stab at the apple literally from every way, but with love and with care, because our folks can't be brave if they don't feel supported.
Yes. Oh, that's huge. Can you say that again?
I just don't believe folks can feel brave if they don't feel supported. Like, again, I used to work for a union and I used to take a pack of paper every day that had addresses at the top and go knock on doors. And so that first contact people ever had with the union was somebody in their home that they trusted to open a door, let in their house, and let's have a conversation about what this looks like, and walk you through every single step and frame everything out to you, right? Is this gonna be easy? Nope. Can your boss fire you? Yeah, but can't your boss fire you today? You know, but you gotta give people a place to start, some human contact, let people ask questions, talk about their fear, you know, and that's why this, I believe, is a first step, right?
Yeah. And, you know, you touched on a couple other things without even like saying the words. I mean, you're showing love and you're also being transparent. And you're bringing joy out of what could be or is a tense event. The people on the other side are clutching their guns and their beer cans, you know, ready to react. They're not having any fun. They don't trust each other, which puts us at quite the advantage. And while I too believe vote and, you know, or I shouldn't say it that way. I do believe we need to vote. I think I often bring up Kristen Richardson Jordan in New York City because she won. She's on the city council. She is an abolitionist. You know, that she endorsed the 10 demands. I mean, that's a victory. And so the idea for the 10 demands was, you know, we know Antifa is scaring people. We know just the presence of Black people scares people.
Come on.
And then there's some quieter people who aren't scaring you on the streets who say, you know, if this terrifies you, here's a solution. Take a look at this, change these laws, and then you won't have anyone scaring you, you know, lighting your businesses on fire ever again.
That's
And
right.
so that was the idea, you know, similarly to yours, is that, you know, it's all connected. We have the people on the streets. You know, we had the Black Panther Party scaring people because they were armed. And then you had Martin Luther King, who nobody really listened to, and became this safer option. So we'll pass the Civil Rights Act because otherwise we might have a war.
That's right. That's right. That's absolutely right. It's funny you mentioned that, because that's the kind of stuff we're thinking about with the programming. Where Bernice King is a friend of the Frontline campaign and has talked with us a couple of times, different discussions. And we actually would really like to get her on camera to talk about how folks think that King's last big campaign was the strikers, but he had actually gone to Chicago and tried to do the housing, and all of the terrible racism that he incurred, and how he consistently said that Chicago, he'd take Alabama, he'd take Mississippi, you know, all of these distorted views people have of the South and what his experience was and what he was actually fighting for. You know, they like to just have these big chunks, sorry for the background noise, but these big chunks of time in King's life. It's like when Jesus went into the wilderness and no, baby. He went from the voting rights campaign and started thinking about the interconnect. I mean, he wasn't ever not thinking about it, but he knew he had to expand the campaign. And that's when they really turned on him.
Absolutely.
Right?
Exactly. And so let's touch on that then. What was so scary was that it was having a wider effect. That, you know, they were bringing in people that the state wasn't expecting. It was more dangerous in a way because it had, you know, more of the will of the people in it, I guess, or
right.
larger swath of the people. I've one of the founders of 10 Demands, a guy named Nick, who also co-founded Revolutionary Blackout Network. And they, I would say they spend the majority of their time talking about global issues. Nick focuses a lot on things related to 10 Demands also, but, you know, one of the things they've, you know, maybe caught a little bit of heat for was what some perceive to be a willingness to organize with the right. And it's such an interesting topic that I'm just curious about your thoughts. I've always said from day one, for the very reason we've been talking about earlier, security is important. I'm not organizing with anyone I don't trust, no matter what group they come from. So if we, a la, you know, the Rainbow Coalition can really believe that they're an ally, sure. And I honestly think that's what my friends at RBN are saying too. And I also believe that I think it's indisputable that across our country, the working class, the members of unions, they're not all leftists. They're not all Democrats even. And if we were to have a general strike from Day Without Us, somehow, some way, we need to incorporate that other half of the country. And I think economics is an important way to do that. Like, we're all poor. They're all rich. We're more connected than you think. Anyway, what are your thoughts on all that?
You know, I personally feel not a lot of conflict about that as a Black woman in America, to be clear. I will say that, you know, I organized the only Lipton tea plant left in North America. This story is going somewhere, stick with me. And it is in Suffolk, Virginia. And it was the summer of 2016, heading into the primaries. And, you know, one of my biggest leaders, he's still there, had a Trump sign in his yard bigger than me. He welcomed me into his home. He followed my leadership. To
What?
this day, my husband and I were just talking about, to this day, this man wishes me a happy anniversary on Facebook. He's a black belt in karate. He's a fisherman. I met his wife. The night of the union election was actually him and his wife's a significant anniversary. I want to say like 30, 40. He brought his wife to the union count. So let me just say, like, shout out to Philip. Like, there are Philips in the world, because in Philip's mind, it's not that I am Black or he's white. Philip believes that everybody should be treated equally. He's a union steward in that plant, and he will ride out for everybody if he can find the premise where their rights have been violated under that contract. Now, what happens when Philip's around his friends or people like that? I don't know, and I'm not going to say, but I do believe there are people like that, but I also don't know how much energy or time we have to put into pulling that out, right?
You,
we have
you,
I'm
I'm going to answer that question for you. You don't have to do anything.
right.
It is not your job to go fix the Phillips.
Right.
If anything, between the two of us, it's my job. But, as a Jew, I'm and a victim of a ton of anti-Semitism as a youth. I don't want to do it either. So like, right. Straight, cis, Christian, rich white men, you go do that. And that can be the cool rich kids movement William Upsky Wimsat was talking about. Okay. Because that would be huge. And 99% of like my kids' generation that isn't in line with my kids is only like that because of their parents.
That's right.
Yeah. Who wants to listen to the... Sorry, go ahead.
No, just when you hear people say, well, eventually the racist will die. Girl, when? Right. When? My mom. So if that were true, right? If that were true, my mom, who had a Klan cross burned in her front yard because my grandfather wanted to run for office in South Carolina in the 50s, wouldn't her knowledge of racism would have dwindled and been erased, right? If that were true. My mom and Ruby Bridges are close in age. So don't talk to me about that. The racists will all die off one day and then we'll be up. Girl, no.
I mean, unless we somehow get rid of all of the propaganda, I mean, it's impossible. It's literally impossible. Over time, you do change hearts and minds. You taught that Trumper that there are people like you. He didn't think that before he met you. No way. Because you don't vote for Trump if you think people like you exist, Tiffany. Like, I don't know. You got to be really out there. Okay. And that's half the country. So no, it's not just going away. And on that note, like, I don't want to keep you for too long. You're insanely busy leading up to this. I can't even imagine, but maybe a good way to end is like, underlying all of this discussion is some of the most profound inequity and injustice in the history of human civilization. You mentioned 27 million new people protesting in 2020. A lot of orgs were created out of that, including 10 Demands. And I think you mentioned, you mentioned that one of the ones that you help organize.
The Frontline.
The Frontline. Yeah. Right. The Frontline also. So what resulted from that? An increase in police funding nationwide. Most of the COVID funding going to cops. The criminalization of Black and Indigenous people, predominantly immigrants and brown people and trans people, is not unintentional. I don't like when people say the system's broken, because it's not. It's actually like finely, beautifully oiled. It's working exactly as it's supposed to. And so given that we incarcerate more people than South Africa at the height of apartheid or during slavery, I'd love to end on a happy note, particularly because of how we've spoken so much about love. Take this horrible information and tell the audience, what that, when you hear that, what's your first reaction? You've heard it a million times before, so it's not new to you. But what's your first reaction? And then after that, what do you like? What do you want to say to people who are hearing it for the first time?
Yeah, I want to say that things don't have to be this way. Every time I hear that, that's the first thing I honestly think of. Like, it's bullshit. And things don't have to be this way. We don't have to live this way. This is actually a design. So if it's just the design, that means we could redesign it, right? Nothing that we have right now is set in stone. And, you know, there's been a lot of talk, the earth is healing, the new earth is being born. I believe that we are the midwives. That doesn't mean we get there. Doesn't mean we get there in our lifetimes, but it does mean we help push, right? It does mean we help, we push, we love. You all know what a midwife does. She stays they stay right at the side of the birthing person, and they don't leave them. They don't leave them even after the baby is pushed out. They stay with them. They help them figure out their next move. That's what our job is right now. So if you're hearing this for the first time, come be a midwife to that new world that is possible, right? Come stand next to the birthing people of this new world, because it's all of us. And like, get your mitts, put your gloves on, and let's push. We can push. It doesn't have to be like this. Number one. Number two, the way that it stays like this is as long as we all keep our heads down and only worry about what's going on in front of us. And this is the part that makes me very emotional, because I know it's so hard right now for any of us to think about anything beyond what's going on in our house, in our homes, in our neighborhoods, and keeping our families safe. I know that. I also know that we can't go on like this. We have to depend on each other. We have to begin to trust each other, learning the names of the people on our street and being in community with the people around us, because look what just happened in Pakistan. Imagine if you didn't know anybody on your street. Imagine if you didn't know the names of the people around you, and something that it's all not too far away from us. And I don't mean that in an unhappy way. I mean it in a realistic way. So get your hands on some people you can build with now. Go give that cup of sugar, borrow some hot dogs, knock on a door, right? Like we need each other more than ever right now. None of us is an island, and this day is an invitation, and everybody's going to be there. March for Our Lives is going to be there. The Working Families Party going to be there. Me Too is going to be there. The Ford Foundation going to be there. Like, everybody, we're trying to offer you introduce you, friends. You're my friends now. So come to the party, and I'm going to introduce you around the movement to all of our friends who have a place for you. And they literally are preparing a place for you right now. They are preparing a place for you to absorb you, to share information with you, to help you learn how to plug in. So it's like this now, but as the elders say, trouble don't last always. It don't have to be like this, y'all. It doesn't. We can work together. We can get over our petty differences and see that, again, there's more of us than there are people that want to drive their cars through protests. There's more of us than people that want to shoot up a concert in Las Vegas for no reason. There's more of us that want freedom, democracy, clean air, safe, free, public schools, housing, then there are people that want the opposite of that. So it's an invitation, and it's free, and we're gonna all be there. It's gonna be litty. We have surprises for you, and just come be down with the clique.
Yeah, you don't want to be left out of this. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be quiet. I'm gonna learn. Tiffany, thank you so much. Oh my God. I mean, that ending was freaking killer, man. I really hope that together we can get the word out as far as freaking possible. And I'm so excited for this event and what follows, probably most importantly, what comes from it.
I appreciate that. And I'm going to end by saying people have been asking that question. What happens next is exactly the invitation. It's up to us, right? Because you're not going to DC or LA, or you're going to go outside, touch some grass where you live, meet some folks where you live, and hopefully begin to build community. And when I say I love you, I mean, I do love you. I love you all, because we need each other. And what you want for your family, I want for my family. what you want to see in your neighborhood, I want to see in my neighborhood, but we're going to get there through love and through consideration. So join us.
Thank you.